All right, let's talk about the top story, which kind of blew up our show late this afternoon when reporters started scrambling to get to the Kremlin because there was apparently going to be a big speech from Russian President Vladimir Putin. A number of moving pieces on this. The Putin was supposed to be speaking. It seems, according to reports, about the breakaway republics, Donetsk, Luhansk, in the People's Republic of, the Donetsk People's Republic, Luhansk People's Republic, in eastern Ukraine, as they are moving forward with independence votes in the next few days. There's a lot of questions about that, but it looks like this national address is delayed until tomorrow, according to the president's former advisor. So this just posted a few moments ago. Sergei Markov, a Russian political scientist who is a close former advisor to Putin, says the president's national address has been delayed until tomorrow. He announced that news on his Telegram channel, and then it was confirmed separately by RT, who simply wrote, "Go to sleep." So this was interesting. He was going to talk about these referendums, and he probably will tomorrow. So again, why this? I want to know about the delay.
Yes.
Because everyone was all waiting for this speech. And then I started looking at the clock. And in the United States, if the president is going to speak and address the nation, you usually do it during prime time, meaning 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Now, I don't know about Russia. If anyone's watching us from Russia, do people stay up much, much later there? Like in Spain, where they eat dinner at 11 p.m.? Maybe like a national address starts at midnight, like it would in Spain or something. But in the United States, it's usually 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. Sometimes I think the State of the Union address would start around 9 p.m. or 8:30, 9 p.m. for the president to speak. So I was looking at the clock thinking, okay, it's getting late. And then now we get this delay. So does that, and now of course Western media is all over this. Sky News is saying this is evidence that there's total panic inside of the Kremlin, that they are in panic mode. They don't know what they're doing. It's a total collapse at the Kremlin this hour.
Right. There must be some tactical reason, right? Because some reports are that it was already recorded. So we just don't know. Now, what we know is a speculation about what the speech would be about. We believe that it was going to lay the foundation for a much bigger war than just the conflict that is happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can see that. Like, listen to what they say, but watch what they do, right? That's something we say on the show all the time. Watch what they do. And we are seeing major troop movements tonight. We are seeing huge buildup. We're seeing a movement of, first of all, we're seeing a number of submarines moving out of the Black Sea from the Russian forces. We're seeing the paratrooper division from Syria being relocated out of Syria back to Ukraine and into the front lines. We are also seeing massive rail movements, according to reports just a few moments ago, from Kiev. So Ukraine building up their reserve forces on trains and heading to Kharkiv. So major buildup. What's unfolding? We don't know at this hour. Of course, we don't have. It's dark now, so we don't exactly know what's unfolding. But we do know that all eyes are on a major military advancement from the Russian side into this region.
Right. In fact, by some speculation, they may be looking to heavily increase the 200,000 troop force that is there now. I didn't realize that they had this kind of success with just 200,000 troops. That seems like a small number for what they've been able to accomplish. Yeah,
well, if you listen to the Western media, it's been a total failure. By the way, so this is how the Western media, can we play this, Philip? This is Western media's take this afternoon. So as we got reports of this speech unfolding and the president to talk about the referendum votes, this is the Western media's take on, I just want you to listen how this news anchor from ABC sets up this story and talks about Russia's attack on Ukraine as being a total failure. Listen.
The Kremlin has made a series of dramatic announcements in response to its failing special military operation in Ukraine. Russia says it will hold referendum votes in occupied Ukrainian territory to officially recognize the areas as Russian. Foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burridge joining me now live from Kharkiv, Ukraine. Tom, how significant is this announcement, and how could it affect the fighting?
This is a dramatic series of steps taken by the Kremlin, Deirdre. Let's deal with them one by one. Firstly, this idea that there'll be these referendums in parts of Ukraine occupied by the Russians right now. So effectively...
So the way she sets that up is that it's been a total failure.
Right. And he says this idea that, right? This idea has been a concern of Ukrainian politicians for almost 3 decades.
Right.
So this idea that just popped up, right? By many accounts, Ukrainian politicians have been afraid of this since the early 90s. And it's their worst nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, that's how the Western media does it. Like, oh, it's just an idea. Hey, it was this afternoon. By the way, watch our show from last night where we went through point by point by point talking about the massacre and genocide in Donbass for the last 8 years. Point by point, and I went through it over and over and over again. And so this wasn't just some random idea that popped into their head, right? So this idea that they are going to hold referendum votes to become part of the Russian Federation, that's the idea, right? That Donetsk, Luhansk, and even the Zaporizhia region this afternoon, we got word as well. And Philip, you want to show that? So we got some additional bombing. Let's Zaporizhia vote. Let's show that one here. So there's the power plants there that we're seeing. These are the nuclear power plants, the largest in Europe. And now we got word the Ukraine Zaporizhia region is going to bid to join Russia as well. This will be part of it. And again, this comes on a day when this afternoon we saw additional shelling of the nuclear power plant. And of course, one of the big concerns is the water source. Images show damage to pipes of the cooling system at Zaporizhia this afternoon. This is in South Ukraine. This is a result of Ukrainian shelling. And of course, as we had George Eliason on the show, we featured his sound a few months ago where he talked about the major concern, not necessarily the nuclear fallout, although that would be catastrophic. It's the contaminated water, the radiated contaminated water, which would be the absolute most devastating thing for the people around the plant. So now we've got these word from Donbass, the republics revealing the date to vote on to join Russia, which will be from 23rd of September to the 27th of September. This is according to the LPR and DPR leaders. But it was kind of funny to watch the Western response to this afternoon. So these votes, right? These
as if they're being forced to vote. Now, if you follow your history at all, you know that this region was dragged kicking and screaming into the Ukrainian nation. They did not want it. It was a bloody fight against it. And since they've been a part of it, they've been persecuted. And so the Western media is treating them like, oh my gosh, they're going to have to pretend that they don't want to be part of Ukraine. Many of them don't, right? It's not for the Western media to tell them what they want.
Right. But the Western media's response has been hilarious to this afternoon. They all fell in line with this vote, this phrasing. They were calling them sham elections, sham. Like it came from somewhere. I wonder where it came from. Came right from the White House or White House talking points, and then the Western media started parroting it. You can see it all over social media today using this word sham, but it started here with Jake Sullivan.
It is in this context that President Putin appears to be on the brink of pursuing 2 actions. First, as we've been warning for months, Russia appears to be proceeding with plans to hold sham referenda in areas of Ukraine under its control, and even in areas of Ukraine not currently under its control.
So I just want to put a pin in that for a second, like sham. How do you know? Like what sham, just because they're going to hold a vote to become independent or to join Russia? Like why
does the United States condone some places to claim their sovereignty, such as Kosovo? But Donetsk does not get that.
And by the way, America is being held up as the arbiter of honest and fair elections.
Right.
Really? Like we get to tell other people, like, yeah, okay, I love the hypocrisy there. Like we get to stand and say that kind of a thing. Okay, sure we do. How many elections have we gone through now where we've had all sorts of questionable concerns, right? Look at 2000, George W. Bush and Al Gore, for crying out loud. Just look at what happened in Florida.
Went well. What are you talking about?
Well. hanging chads my ass. So again, Jake Sullivan saying it's going to be a sham, and then you saw all these tweets popping up, social media following right lockstep with this. Look at this, all these blue checks on Twitter. To be clear, no sham referenda will change Europe's stance on Ukraine, its territorial integrity, nor will it change the fact that it was Russia that invaded sovereign Ukraine. Europe stands with Ukraine. Here's more. New York Post, Russia to hold sham referenda. I mean, they literally got these talking points right from the White House in the same phrasing. Here's another one. AFP news agency, U.S. denounces sham Russian planned referendum.
At least that one's in quotes. So, it's not them calling,
Yeah.
That's a little better.
But this shit also trickled right over to Ukraine, where you have Zelensky's right-hand man this afternoon, Dmitry Kuleba, tweeted this. He said, sham referendums will not change anything. Neither will any hybrid mobilization. Russia has been and remains an aggressor, illegally occupying parts of Ukraine land. Ukraine has every right to liberate its territories, and it will keep liberating them, whatever Russia has to say. Sham referendums. Of course, this is the same guy who won't negotiate with Sergei Lavrov, his Russian counterpart, over peace agreements. They've been ignoring this, and he was confronted by this today, Dmitrio, and he just walked away. Watch this.
Going to meet Minister Lavrov here? No.
If he decides to meet with you, will you accept?
No.
No. Peace? No. I just walk away. From that. So the area in question, this is, I think, the most important piece of this, and then we'll maybe talk a little bit more about the military piece. But if we want to put up this map here, this shows the region specifically. If you look where Crimea is there in the center, thanks to Intel Republic for this map. Lugansk People's Republic, Donetsk People's Republic, you see the Kherson region. And so these areas in blue are the areas that are going to be holding these referenda and voting to join the Russian Federation.
And what those areas have in common is that they're resource rich. A lot of the mining comes out of that area. It always has, until recently when Ukraine decided that it did not want to buy coal out of the Luhansk and Donetsk region for whatever reason. Right. And so without that region, Ukraine really loses a lot economically. A lot of, the miners there, they send in their resources. They make very little money. A lot of the resources go into Kiev. They don't get very much back by way of infrastructure or quality of life. Right.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons that politicians in Ukraine have been holding so tight to this region. If it goes into Russia, which is by many accounts already resource rich, right? They don't want Russia to have control over this area that has a good amount of coal and other natural resources that are actively being mined in a dangerous way, I might say. I think the statistic is like 4 people die for every however 1,000 pounds of coal. Like, it's dangerous. This is a very contested region for a reason.
Right. I'd love to hear in our chat, Susanna Mack just made a nice comment. She said the people of the Donbass have been wanting this for 8 years.
Yeah, it's 4 lives per million tons of coal produced in that region.
So the people there have been wanting this for 8 years. I'd love to hear the people in our chat right now in our comments. We are live. Yes, we're live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So please subscribe. You can chat with us if you're a subscriber. That's so we can slow it down a little bit. But just let us know in the comments right now. Do you think that this is a smart move by the People's Republics of Donetsk and Lugansk to declare their allegiance to the Russian Federation and join? Yes, no? What are your thoughts? Give us some comments. I'd love to see that because I want to talk about the military side of this before we move on.
And will any Western powers acknowledge if it doesn't go?
Well, we do
way?
know already that that's not going to happen. So this afternoon we heard from Jake Sullivan, right, David? That Jake Sullivan at the White House saying, absolutely, we will not recognize these regions ever. Okay, ever. We will not recognize these regions ever. Okay, so again, that's what the United States do. They care? As long as they have security and peace, do the people of Donetsk, Lugansk, near the nuclear power plant, do they care if NATO recognizes them as Russian?
I don't think NATO has done them any favors so far, so I don't think they're going to hold out for that praise from Daddy. No, and later this afternoon, actually, we heard from NATO too. NATO chief says that Russian votes in Ukraine are further escalation of war.
So that was this afternoon from NATO.
But then what reasonably does a politician expect them to do? Because by most accounts, the State Department and the United States knows that these regions are being shelled by Ukrainian army.
Of course
they know this, right?
And they've
so
written
what
about
they
it,
want
yes.
them to do is just take it, shut up, remain a part of Ukraine, keep getting persecuted.
Well, yes, it's to the last. To fight this war until the last Ukrainian. That's the point. That's what NATO wants, right? It's a puppet government. They want to use Ukraine as a proxy battlefield. That's why they're buying up so much land in Ukraine. That's why George Soros has invested so much. That's why think about all of the farms that Americans and NATO and U.S. companies have bought in Ukraine. Come on, guys, like wake up. This is a country that is literally being used by NATO to fight to the last Ukrainian. And now they're bringing these reserve forces from Kiev to get on the trains and drive straight into battle where they're arguably going to be surrounded and destroyed in the next few days. So what will Putin announce tomorrow when he actually does give this speech? Will it be a recognition of these referenda votes, perhaps, or largely? And then will he also announce a major offensive militarily? Maybe not. He's going to announce something like that, but all the pieces are starting to come together. Earlier today, Putin met with his military-industrial complex. Now, vastly different than the United States military-industrial complex. This was earlier today. He sat down with the leaders of the Russian military-industrial complex, and he said he wanted to thank them all for what they've been able to do on the battlefield. He says basically we've spent about $6 billion on weapons so far in this war. NATO, he says, has used up almost all of their reserve weapons, which is true. By the way, the Pentagon confirmed as much, did they not?
Yes.
They've used up all of their reserves. He said, so with our investment in your fantastic weapons, we've been able to basically destroy all of these NATO weapons. $6 billion. I want you to think about that for a second. They've spent $6 billion on their weapons for this war and building up their weapons stash for this war. Think about what the United States alone has spent sending to Ukraine.
Yes.
I mean, upwards of $80 billion at this point.
With another 15 on the way. That when you just opposed the story we did in the newsletter this morning about how the Army is telling soldiers to use food stamps because they can't buy the food legitimately outright. Well, it's legitimate. I didn't mean that word. I apologize. They can't buy food with the salary that they are given. Right. Because they were only given I think it was between 2% and 3% raise last year. And next year, the proposal is only a little over 4%. Inflation is 8 to 9%. So we care a lot about the military, but not about military personnel. And that to me is shameful. These are the people who are risking their lives. And they're now being told you can't even get a living wage. Sorry.
So the United States is expecting a major move by Putin in the next 24, 48 hours. Again, it's very interesting. If you're just joining us, the Russian president was set to give a speech tonight. We had that from multiple sources in Moscow on this, and then they delayed it. Then, of course, Western media jumped all over it and said that this is a sign of panic. And
it's a kind of funny move, right? Like let your adversaries just freak out, and then you didn't even say anything, right?
It's kind of,
and then you're like, thanks. Now I know exactly where you're going to go with this. Now I'm going to say what I was going to say.
It's kind of like I don't know. It's kind of like hey, I'm going to speak when I want to speak move. I mean, it's kind of like, hey, we got everyone riled up. You know what? We're not ready for it. We've got a few more things and moving pieces. I'm going to go to bed. We'll figure this out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or it is a shit show. Like, I'm just saying, we don't know, right? Unless anyone watching right now literally is in the inner circle of the Kremlin, we don't know. We can only go on the reports that we have from close Putin advisors who are saying it's been delayed. But you have to think something big is coming with all of these troop movements that are happening and these referenda votes and the concern from the White House today. So we will continue to follow this. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, please. Make sure you smash that like button. When you do that, it pushes us further out into the algorithm covering the stories that the mainstream media does not want you to see.